All right, looks like everyone's situated. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed residents, chamber members, and honored guests, I stand before you today with immense pride and joy as we gather to celebrate the vibrant spirit and unity of our beloved village at the 2024 Village of Orland Park State of the Village Address. As Chamber President, it is with great pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you as we come together to embrace the essence of community and togetherness. I'm just glad everyone was able to find the place with all the new building and wayfinding signage around that I've heard complaints about. As I look around the room today, I see a lot of familiar faces, and each of us is here for a reason. Take me, for example. First, the village asked the funniest guy in the village to speak, and he said no. Then they asked the most handsome guy in the village, and he refused. Then they asked the most intelligent guy in the village, and I didn't want to turn him down 3 times in a row, so I finally agreed to do it. As we gather here, we recognize the profound link between the health of our community and the success of our businesses. Businesses are the lifeblood of our village, fueling economic growth, providing employment opportunities, and shaping the very fabric of our society. However, it is essential to acknowledge that the health and prosperity of our businesses are intrinsically tied to the well-being of our community. When our community thrives, our businesses flourish, and vice versa. As we embark on this journey together, let us remember the values that define us: compassion, respect, and unity. Let us look to the future with hope and optimism, knowing that by working hand in hand, we can overcome any challenge that comes our way. I encourage you all to embrace the opportunities that lie ahead, to engage with one another with open hearts and minds, and to foster a sense of camaraderie that transcends all boundaries. Together, we can build a village that is not just a place on a map, but a shining example for all communities. Today, we are fortunate to have a leader who understands this delicate balance and works tirelessly to ensure that our village remains vibrant and prosperous. Our mayor has demonstrated unwavering dedication to fostering a business-friendly environment, supporting local entrepreneurs, and creating opportunities for growth and innovation. He is almost always right, except when he voted no on one of my projects in his first board meetings. But I'll digress. All kidding aside, under his leadership, we have seen remarkable progress in infrastructure development, community engagement, and economic revitalization. His vision for our village extends far beyond short-term gains, focusing on sustainable growth that benefits all residents and businesses alike. As president of the Chamber of Commerce, I am proud to stand beside a mayor who recognizes the interconnectedness of our community's health and the success of our businesses. One of my first initiatives as president of the Chamber was to bring back hosting this State of the Village address, and I'm proud to say we are now in our 2nd year of doing so. Although I'm not sure Keith's upcoming presentation can top the sensationalism of last year's, but I'm continually surprised almost on a daily basis, so we'll see what he has in store. The mayor and the village board have been very supportive of the Chamber, and for that, we are all grateful. Many of you have heard of our inaugural Summerfest event last year that was a smashing success. And don't worry, the greatest event in the history of Orland Park is scheduled for its 2nd edition in a new location at 153rd Street train station at Centennial Park West. We had over 33,000 friends and family that came through last year and are expecting over 40,000 this year. We still have sponsorships available. I'll be going around asking. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this event would not be possible without the support of the entire village board and village staff, along with all the other ancillary services, the police, the fire, the parks and rec, to make this happen. The Chamber and the village board together will continue to build a village where businesses can thrive, residents can prosper, and our community can flourish for generations to come. So please join me in welcoming our esteemed mayor, but first, I'd like to introduce Trustee Campus, one of the best who's ever done it, who I've dubbed America's Trustee, who will say a few words. And I promise this is my last year as Chamber President, and if you like what you heard, you can catch my 2nd set tonight at Silver Lake Country Club for the Rotary Dinner. All right, thank you and Godspeed. Trustee Campus, everybody.
Thank you, Ramsey. Always have to wonder, following an act like that, how I got to a situation where I'm in between Ramsey and Mayor Peacock. But here I am. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, fellow residents, good morning and welcome to our annual State of the Village address. It's wonderful to see so many vibrant members of our community here today as we reflect on the past achievements, tackle our present challenges, and anticipate a promising future with optimism. I'd like to thank the Orland Park Area Chamber of Commerce, Ramsey Hassan, for making this event possible. Thank you, Ramsey. As Ramsey said, my name is Sean Compass, and it has been a privilege to stand before you today in what is hopefully just the beginning of my journey as a trustee here at Orland Park. As the youngest member of the board, I've been committed to bringing fresh perspectives and innovative ideas to our discussions and decisions. I am honored to serve with professional leaders from several different industries and experiences who enrich our shared vision with their perspectives. I know that my professional background in technology consulting has deeply influenced my approach, encouraging a blend of tradition with new trends and innovations. And I know that my fellow trustees just love when I mention that I'm the youngest member, but in a playful nod to younger generations' lingo, I'd like to share a fitting metaphor for my view of our village. One thing I considered early on in my tenure was how Orland Park is often abbreviated as OP or VOP. This reoccurring abbreviation directly reminded me of a term from competitive gaming, where OP means overpowered or exceptionally strong and effective. This gaming reference resonated with me as it perfectly mirrors the strengths of our community: strong, effective, and exceptional in many ways. However, just as in video games, where an OP feature might be nerfed or weakened by developers to maintain competitive balance, our village often faces similar adjustments from external forces. Both Illinois and Cook County have introduced policies that can be likened to the concept of nerfing, as they are often imposing additional burdens and challenges that can dampen our strengths. From shifting financial responsibilities without corresponding support to implementing regulatory changes that strain our local resources, these measures sometimes seem to curb our ability to excel and maintain our high standards. Yet despite these challenges, Orland Park has forged ahead with significant achievements. Over the past 3 years of my tenure, we have completed updates to more than 22 active parks, including large community parks, transforming them into vibrant spaces for families and athletes alike. Our strategic infrastructure plan has improved road conditions dramatically, reducing roads in poor condition from 40% to less than 15%, with ongoing committed efforts to further decrease this percentage and improve our sustainability and maintainability going forward. Most importantly, the village has maintained the lowest crime levels in over 2 decades, demonstrating to potential offenders that our community will dedicate the necessary time and resources to bring them to justice. We've accomplished all of these works while maintaining a safe budget reserve of 20% and without raising property tax rates. This fiscal discipline demonstrates our commitment to efficient government and prudent financial management, ensuring that Orland Park remains a robust and thriving community. These outcomes exemplify our commitment to excellence and our ability to rise above challenges, setting a benchmark for excellence in community development and municipal governance. As we continue to move forward, we are prepared to delve into new initiatives and projects that will further demonstrate why Orland Park is indeed OP in more ways than one. At this moment, I extend my deepest gratitude to those who contribute tirelessly to our village's governance and success: our village attorneys, all the village directors, our chief of police, the assistant village manager, our village manager, George Kaswara, and of course, my fellow trustees, our diligent clerk, and our esteemed mayor. Each of these individuals plays a crucial role in our achievements, and their dedication and leadership are the backbone of our community's enduring strength and unity. To guide us through today's address and to share more about the state of our beloved village, it is my great privilege to introduce a leader whose vision and commitment reflect the strong and forward-thinking spirit of Orland Park. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our mayor, Keith Pecaw.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. And thank you, Ramsey. One thing for sure, Ramsey, you won't be out of a job. We have every car dealer you can imagine down 159th. So if you ever need one, you'll have a place to go. Sean, I want to thank you for your great words about the village. Sean's been on the board now for 3 years. I also want to thank all the other trustees that are here today: Trustee Radishevsky, Trustee Milani, Trustee Healy, and Trustee Katsinas. I know Trustee Reardon had work commitments, as did the clerk O'Sullivan. So they couldn't be here today. But thank you all very much for coming here today. Thanks to all of you for being here, all the business leaders, all of the members of the Chamber of Commerce, all of the employees that have come here today, and to Trustee Compos's point, the village would not be a great place without all the residents, without all the businesses, and without all the great employees that we have here. This isn't a prepared speech, as you guys have probably come to expect. I'm going to walk you through a lot of the things that are going through the village. You'll see a lot of similar slides updated than what you've seen before, but we'll talk about it. And I promise that the first part won't be as uncomfortable as last year, but I will also promise that I'm still going to, there are some pertinent issues that have popped up recently that are challenging for the village, that are not necessarily the greatest issues to talk about it, but we rip off the Band-Aid here and we talk about it, we make it public. So recent village events, so there's two big ones that I'm going to talk about here, but the first one is the Triangle TIF, and essentially the Triangle, and Edwards Realty is involved in this and redeveloping this site. In order to make that site work, we have to create a new TIF, which nobody wants to do. I know other taxing bodies aren't thrilled with it. We're not thrilled with it. But the reality is the vacant land that's still there generates no property taxes because it's owned by the village. And the only way we're going to get this done is to contribute in some way, and a TIF allows us to do that. So in 2021, we proposed, and really all the other taxing bodies are on board with this. It's really the school districts that we have issues with. So one of the things we offered, and this will focus a lot on D135 because they are only in Orland Park, and they're the ones that benefit the most from our proposal. But we offered to transfer the cultural center, so the old library, to District 135 for $1. Now we know that there were upgrade costs of about $6.2 million. For the village, we don't do enough in that building to make that worthwhile. But at the time, the schools were looking to add a lot of space for early childhood education. So we said, hey, we'll transfer this to you for $1. We'll keep the parking lot. We'll maintain the parking lot. As it turns out, they declined that for whatever reasons they did. They didn't discuss that in public, so we don't know. But they declined that, and instead they added the 5 schools, which was $17 million. So it's about $11 million extra that they spent. But we also offered to redevelop just out here, the south end of John Humphrey Complex, to redevelop those fields. It's about $3.1 million. And additionally, we were going to take 9750 out of the current TIF. 9750 is the only thing that generates any tax dollars. And I'm not going to go into how a TIF works. We've done that before, but it generates tax dollars that go into the TIF. If we take it out of the TIF, it'll immediately go to all the taxing bodies. So that was worth about $4.3 million to District 135 and District 230 combined. We also have been trying to acquire right-of-way from the Forest Preserve for Park School for some better traffic flow around the school. And we basically agreed, like we always have, and we're required to do, to student reimbursements following Illinois TIF laws. Basically, the requirements that we asked for this was for to agree to the new boundaries and not fight them, and to extend the IGA on the field usage. So the IGA over there, so we have IGAs for field usage with District 135. It's been in place for probably about 40 years, but it's updated every 5 years, and there was a time where it was not updated for a few years. I want to avoid that. If we're going to spend $3.1 million, I just want to sign a long-term agreement. Basically, we maintain the fields, we schedule the fields, they get priority for the fields for their use, but we take care of them, we fertilize them, we cut them, we clean them up, we do the garbage pickup, we do all that stuff for them. So it's been a win-win. They declined that. They said they had no interest in the cultural center, fine, so we took that out. Then in December of 2022, we pointed out to them that the circumstances have changed with the TIF, and we were really going to have a tough time taking 9750 out of the TIF because it would create a financial burden for Orland Park. However, we recognized that that offer had been on the table for about 14 or 15 months, so we said, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll give you another month. We'll give you to the end of the month to make a decision. District 230 communicated to us that they needed some time because their board needed to meet, so we actually extended this till about February. They both declined. So that's where we sat on that. So some history on the TIF. In 2004, it was created, okay, and the original debt on that was $32 million. Then there was $64 million of debt taken out by the village, and we put the money in for the apartments at 9750. So you had $96 million of debt. Now we've since exited that, the debt, and we were bought out by 9750 since I've been here. And now the current deficit is $27.5 million. So there's no money in the TIF. I mean, it has not been successful for a lot of reasons that you've heard me talk about before. Nobody on this board had anything to do with it. No one on any of the other school boards or anybody else. I don't think any of the board members anywhere that are involved in this had anything to do with the TIF at the time. And I know that many of us that are on the board right now were opposed to this at the time. The only way that however, that we can move forward is to do a new TIF for the land that is not yet developed. So that's the plan, to let the old one expire with what's in it, take the stuff that has nothing, there's no value. So essentially you're taking 9750, you're taking the parking deck, and University of Chicago, which is a non-for-profit, you're taking those three things out of the TIF, and everything else would remain in the new one. So to give you an idea of what that proposed development of the south part of John Humphrey, it was essentially two 200-foot softball fields, very nice fields like what we have out here now, and then additionally a combination softball field plus soccer field. It could be used for both because the District 135 has now gone to interscholastic soccer, so they need soccer fields. So we offered to do the fields. If they wanted to make those fields turf instead of the one softball and one soccer field turf, it would be about another $1 million. They would be on the hook for paying for that portion of it, but we would do it grass, but the difference in cost they could cover. So to give you an idea of the benefits we offer them, I already told you about the cultural center, and they elected to spend $17 million rather than the $6. So for whatever reason, and I don't know what those reasons are, but the High Point Fields, the TIF changes that we offered to take out of, and the Park School right-of-ways is a total of about $5.9 million of benefits that we're offering them. And really all we were asking for was an IGA in return. They declined that. Last year, we said, hey, we can still offer you everything but taking the 9750 out of the TIF. So that's the High Point Fields, the right-of-ways. It's still $3.6 million in benefits. Okay? In exchange, we want the long-term agreements. Don't challenge the TIFs and agree to the TIF boundaries. So the same requirements. Their response in February was to threaten us with litigation. We basically informed that the offer would remain on the table through their next board meeting. So that was April. They declined again and demanded now that we take 9750 out of the TIF. So we offered that. We offered that before. We told them that it was no longer possible, but we still left it on the table and they declined it. So now it's only worth, instead of being worth $2.3 million to District 135 because the time has elapsed, it's only worth $0.9 million. But it's still something the village can't do. So we made this offer in good faith. They turned it down. We can't help the fact that they made the decision to turn it down almost a year and a half ago. So that's where we're at. So the other thing they're demanding is otherwise that we pay them for what was an illegal IGA that was done in 2007, and it just violates TIF law. So there's no way, I don't know why the village and the school district at the time agreed to it, but it violates TIF law, and it requires us to pay them first for any excess we have in the TIF. Well, I just showed you the TIF is $27 million in the hole. There's no surplus there to even give them anyways. So we're not sure what they're doing here. So that's kind of where we're at with that. The ball's in their court. We've decided to move forward. The board decided at the last meeting that the offer's no longer on the table. We gave them the offer again. We extended it. They turned it down. So we said, you guys do what you have to do. We're moving forward with the TIF. If we went back through this process, it would delay the TIF 6 months to a year. It would delay the project. We can't afford to delay the project any further. The market is there right now. Ramsey would tell you the market is there right now, so we need to continue to move forward. So that's the school districts and the TIF. Does anybody have any questions on that while we're on that subject? I must have explained it well. So this issue we brought up last year, or I showed last year. It's a lawsuit from our former village manager against the village, against myself, against Trustee Healy, against my campaign. It was filed in April 2020. You've seen this timeline before. Essentially in 2017, I was elected. Before I was even sworn in, Joe Lamargo was hired. His contract was extended in September of that year with 6 months of severance. In 2018, the Illinois State Assembly passed a law saying that severance could be no longer than 20 weeks. 5 days later, our board extended his severance to 9 months because that law didn't go into effect until January 1st. So I was the one dissenting vote. I think that was incredibly wrong, but all that stuff is public. So we know that there was an investigation you've all heard about, started in January of 2019, followed by a resignation after the election, followed by learning about it. No one even knew about the investigation except for a few people. And none of this board, none of the interim village manager, nobody knew. So they completed the investigation. I held a press conference. In September of that year, Mr. Lamargo was hired in Portage, Michigan. He hired Mike Carroll, who was a trustee previously until he didn't run in 2019. And then in the first quarter of that month, Portage, Michigan, where Joe Lamargo works, Dan McLaughlin was paid a consulting contract of $47,000. And then in April 2020, so 4 years ago, he filed the lawsuit. It's been ongoing ever since. Okay. After last year's meeting in June, the judge ruled, and I'm going to go into that a little bit, and then just last night, we approved a settlement on it, so it's over. So I'm going to give you all those details. We learned a lot through the depositions. So one of the questions we all had is, why is Trustee Healy being included in this? I mean, he was just brand new on the board. He wasn't around when Joe Lamargo was village manager at all. He was there he basically swore in, the night he swore in, he approved the resignation, and we hired Tom Dubelby, so wasn't there at all. Well, and this is my opinion from having sat in the room, the three holdover trustees, Trustee Dodge, Calandrello, and Fenton, pushed very, very hard to get Bill Healy and myself excused from executive session so that they could be the ones handling so we couldn't hear anything about the lawsuit that was against us. They also tried to get Kleinthorpe and Jenkins, our attorneys, excused. So much so that we actually had to hire an outside attorney to come in and weigh in on the conflict of interest for Trustee Healy, myself, and Kleinthorpe and Jenkins. That outside attorney concluded that we did not have a conflict of interest and we were allowed to be in the executive session and to vote on this matter. So what they're trying to do is get it to a 3-2 vote so they could settle it and pay Mr. Lamargo more money, just like they did with the severance pay. So at the end, we were allowed to stay in there. We decided to defend the lawsuit. So we also confirmed some things in there. There was never a public vote for this investigation, because that's kind of what this all centered around was the investigation. It was that's required by the Open Meetings Act to do that. That his spending authority was $20,000, and he spent $46,000, which is also something he can't do. And then also he approved paying Carrie Freiling $10,000 in violation of our policy. We also learned that my emails were being searched and given to people. We don't know who was giving them to people, but somebody was giving them to people for political use. So those are things we learned through the depositions. Also remember, in January of 2021, and you've seen this before, there was the the head of the Chicago Federation of Labor came to the board meeting waving an email demanding to know about it. Also, this email was given to Joe Lamargo. In his deposition, Joe Lamargo said that he received that from Jerry Gorman. So, and it was clearly faked. If you look at that date on there, you'll find out that August 11, 2017 was a Friday. So the email is completely fraudulent and was proven so in court. So that brings us up to the ruling that happened. So basically the judge ruled last year. And I'm putting these entire quotes here so that, not that anyone wants to read all this, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but essentially Joe Lamargo sued us. The court found that our motion to dismiss the complaint and basically dismissed it entirely. So it granted our motion. So essentially all of his lawsuit against us failed. Okay, so, and what he said in his written opinion is that, you know, all of the foregoing relate to public policy and are proper subjects for consideration by municipal officials. Remember, he was suing us for defamation. Lamargo has not identified one statement by any defendant that failed to meet that description. He's also not raised any genuine issues of material fact, which allows the court to draw the conclusion that he was permitted, and there was a bunch of other stuff, to violate the ordinance and the policy in 2018 and 2019. Likewise, village officials were free to draw the conclusion that Lamargo failed to comply with the ordinance, limiting his independent expenditure of public funds, and with the policy limiting the authorization of sick time payouts. So that's his opinion. In the remaining countersuit, so we countersued because he was, in our opinion, violating his severance agreement. Joe Lamargo has agreed yesterday to pay the village $30,000. In return, we dismiss our counterclaim. He makes a payment to the village, and he also set forth a statement as well. And that's attached, and you'll be able to find this on the website. You'll have the judge's opinion, you'll have the agreement, as well as Mr. Lamargo's statement will all be on the website for you to look at yourself. As Trustee Reardon said yesterday, he said, and he's an attorney, here in Cook County, and he said to get a summary judgment on anything in Cook County is a rarity. The fact that we got one that was so strong just signifies how strong our case was. And remember, we had 3 trustees that were ready to settle it and pay a lot of our money and to him, a lot more of it. So instead, we did fight it, and he's paying us $30,000. Judge Curry also commented on the facts of the case, and he said Lamargo exceeded his authorized spending limits. And he said there's no genuine issue of material fact that Lamargo was not authorized to engage a law firm to perform $20,000 of work. And if you look at Lamargo's statement and read what he said he acknowledged that the total legal fees were $46,000. He said he didn't have a chance to review the final invoice before he left the village, and he was unaware at that time that the total amount exceeded the village manager spending authority, even if it applied to the situation. So that was his statement. Lamargo paid Carrie Freiling $10,000 inappropriately. The judge said, in addition, there's no genuine issue of material fact that under the village's director payout policy, a resigning employee who did not participate in the early retirement program doesn't qualify for the payout. So there's no genuine issue of fact that Lamargo authorized sick time payout to Freiling despite the fact that it was contrary to policy. There's no question about that. Lamargo's statement on that is that it was his decision and he felt that it was appropriate at that time. So much of this lawsuit, like I said, involved that investigation that was conducted that we didn't find out about until after he left. Lamargo stated his reasons for this investigation. So 2 of the allegations were for bid rigging against my company from 6 years prior to me being mayor, so I wasn't even on the board at the time. So I don't know how I would possibly do that, but that was the complaint. And he said, his statement is that he was approached by Public Works employees who expressed concerns about alleged irregularities in the bidding practices, and they also expressed to him that they were upset with my treatment of the Public Works Department and my criticisms that they considered hypocritical. Well, I will tell you that I don't recall, and I think the board would probably, and everyone else in this room, I don't ever recall criticizing Public Works. In fact, I've been very positive about what they do for snow removal, what they do in the case of the storms we had last week. So I don't know where this came from. Also, he called the complainant. We found this out when Joe Mitchell completed the investigation. He interviewed the supposed complainant, the supposed whistleblower. And the complainant was told to bring all evidence. So he met with Lamargo after the complaint was filed by the union head. He was told to bring all evidence about any bid rigging and documentation. The complainant, without prompting, admitted that he had no evidence that I had done anything wrong regarding the awarding of the contracts, and he emphasized that to Lamargo. He advised that you can look at evidence, but you will not find anything. Additionally, the complainant stated that he told Lamargo that he was intimately involved in picking the contractor for the EAB project and that no misconduct occurred. So the complainant said he had no evidence and that no misconduct occurred, yet you still did an investigation. So myself, I asked the question why, and I think the residents have the right to ask the question why. So another big part of this investigation, if you recall, was the investigation into Horton Insurance and their RFP. Lamargo included the investigation in our insurance company contract, and he said that he discussed, so this is his current statement, that I discussed with the mayor whether the village's insurance broker, Horton Insurance, needed to be bid on the next year's contract to be our insurance broker. I told the mayor that I did not believe that they needed to because there was a contract clause that the village manager could extend the contract for a year. That is absolutely 100% true. He came to me with that. I responded to him and said, I have to abstain because, as you know, I have a business relationship with them, so you need to take this to the board. He then said he asked Trustee Carroll about it since he was on the finance committee, and he said it needed to go to bid. He also says in this current statement that he did not know at the time that the mayor had contractual relationship with Horton Insurance. I also learned later that the mayor planned to and did abstain from the vote, which I did. I'll get to that in a second. He also says he decided to include the Horton contract in the investigation. So my question is, if you're the one that made the request, why would you investigate it? Well, if you go back to the Jones Day report back in 2019, here's what he told Jones Day. As the village manager and official A, being me, village manager being Lamargo, were leaving the meeting, village official A, me, said, you know, I don't know if we need to go out for bid for health insurance. Well, clearly his statement now is way different than that statement, and his statement now is true. A number of board members asked the village manager to call the CEO, which he did. The insurance company A, which is Horton, about the contract, which the village manager did. The CEO said that I have a business relationship with him and that we had a consulting contract, my company had a consulting contract, $25,000 to date. That was what he recalled off the top of his head. Okay, so why is this important? Well, because here's some other facts. Joe Lamargo says today that he had no idea that I was going to abstain. The problem is, on November 20th, 2017, October 15th, 2018, and November 19th, 2019, I abstained from the votes on Horton Insurance because I said I am a customer of theirs and they are a client. So by law, and I also had Dennis Walsh of Kleinthorpe and Jenkins review this in May of 2018 to see if there was a conflict, and he recommended abstaining from any votes, even if there wasn't a potential conflict. Sure looked like there was. So he recommended that, and that's exactly what I did. So interestingly, remember I said that information was gotten from this investigation. Well, in January of 2019, Trustee Carroll said at a board meeting, we have emails from Horton Insurance. Lamargo's lawsuit deposition question, when he was asked about this, so he was asked, so when you're referring to emails regarding this matter, it's the emails you received in response to your FOIA request. Mike Carroll, the answer is yeah. Here's the problem. He said that on the board floor January of 2019. His FOIA wasn't until March of 2019. So he got those emails prior to that from somewhere. Okay? Now remember, prior to me being here back in 2014, 2015, Joe Lamargo was a deputy committeeman for the Democratic Party of Orland Township, which Mike Carroll was a committeeman at that time. When Joe Lamargo was a deputy committeeman, Dan McLaughlin was the committeeman. At the time of the election in 2019, Mike Carroll was the Democratic committeeman. In February and March of 2019, now this is before the FOIA, multiple political mailers and anonymous robocalls were sent out citing a $25,000 contract, which was a conversation that Mr. Lamargo had with Glenn Horton of Horton Insurance. So where did that information, and the only other place that information was at was in a report that wasn't released to anyone yet. So you can draw your own conclusions from that. So, in summary of all this, we basically have someone who was a deputy committeeman for the former mayor, who, after I was elected in 2017, was hired before I was even sworn in by the board. The board paid him extra money by extending his severance. There was an investigation, which we know about, and I'm not going to go into all those details again. The hiring of Mike Carroll and Dan McLaughlin at the place where Joe Lamargo became a village manager. Then a lawsuit gets filed. We have to deal with that, and we have board members trying to settle that lawsuit and pay him more money. We get an email added to that lawsuit that was fabricated from Jerry Gorman. I know the conclusions that I draw from this history. You can draw your own. But after hearing the entire case, Judge Curry found the following that you see here. And I'll let you read the stuff on the left about the facts and circumstances of all of everything, but he said these three things on the right. His, being Lamargo's, self-serving, unsupported testimony that no one in Illinois was touching him is unavailing without some proof of the same. He also said, Lamargo argues that his statements about PCAW are privileged, having been only made in course of this litigation. However, the village has shown proof that Lamargo disparaged PCAW at other times and outside the ambit of this litigation. Lastly, the village has shown the existence, and this is really damning, the village has shown the existence of proof that Lamargo breached his fiduciary duties and converted funds. That's a judge's ruling that Joe Lamargo just said, we're not going to appeal and we're going to pay you $30,000 to make your claims go away. So I can tell you, we're glad this is over. We've all been, Bill and I in particular, have been attacked repeatedly for the last 4 years on this. And I can see Bill's face. Our families have to go through it. We have to pay attorney fees. My campaign was having to pay attorney fees. All this stuff is going on constantly, depositions for 4 years. So we're very happy it's over. We're very happy that we're completely vindicated. But for 7 years, I've been dealing with this. It started when I was first sworn in. Today is actually 7 years to the day since I was sworn in. It's also 2 weeks after legally I was supposed to be sworn in. So my first day was 2 weeks late. So it's been going on for 7 years. And this group of people, they didn't like the results of elections, and they decided to be bullies. That's the bottom line. They're just like schoolyard bullies. And some of the stuff you've heard coming in, more recently, Ramsey alluded to signs, and there's been like veteran centers. These are people that just want to join the schoolyard bullies and be part of the cool kids. Well, I will tell you, me growing up, I went to Sandburg. I was a mathlete and on the golf team and a standout golfer. I know all about bullying, and I'm more than happy to stand up to it. We have an entire board full of nerds, so we know what bullying is. And at the end of the day, the nerds are now in charge, and I think we're doing a great job. And we're going to continue to do a great job. And so these issues, we do have to bring them to your attention. Nobody likes it. It's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable for me. But I'm glad this one, at least, is behind us. There may be more in the future, but this one's behind us. So the board has always, think about all we've been through, and we've just focused on continuing to plow the village forward. That's what we focused on doing, in spite of all this stuff against our families. You know, many of you are aware of, against my wife's, my kid, you know, Trustee Milani's kids. We've all had these things, yet we've stayed the course and give a ton of credit to these board members. Because Cindy Katsinas, Bill Healy, and Mike Milani, they did what was right for 2 years when the vote was 4-3. Anyone who knows politics knows if you're the fourth vote, you can ask for a lot. They never asked for anything. They just did what was right for the village. None of them ever asked for anything. They just do what's right. You're very fortunate to have them. And we're going to continue to focus on the positive things just like we have. That's what we're going to focus on going forward. Look at economic development. So we've put in some things to help businesses. Non-traditional retail tax sharing. That one I don't think we've used yet, but it's still out there. That is to get distributors and people that aren't necessarily a storefront to move in here. Think of like a plumbing supply company or something like that to incentivize them. Backfill vacant restaurant incentive. We've used that a lot. That has really helped us a lot fill some of our vacant restaurant holes. And the interesting thing about that, we do not incentivize businesses, because this comes up, existing restaurants to move locations inside Orland Park, because that would defeat the purpose. We're creating another vacancy. This is for new restaurants coming in, okay? And it could be someone opening a second location, but not someone moving locations. We have a new hotel incentive. We've used that for Hampton Inn. The Orland Commercial Impact, we have not used that, or the Advanced Manufacturing Incentive. These are for much larger projects, more along I-80. Property tax incentive we've certainly used. So, and the large business, again, those are more for things on I-80. But we have used these programs. And in the last year, roughly, or this year, we have had these things open, or they're going to open. Pete's Fresh Market is expected to open in 2024. PJ Superstore, believe it or not, we didn't even know about PJ Superstore until they brought their plans in, and that's unusual. Usually places call. And we've been trying to get a hold of them for 2 years because we thought they were a good fit, and they just showed up. That's the interesting thing about Orland Park. If you're retail and your restaurants, they know about Orland Park. We don't need to go trace them down because they're already here, they're already looking. So I can tell you that the restaurants that you talk about, that I've heard people talk about, like a Gibson's, Maggiano's, they've been here, they look, so we're on their radar screen. Seasons 52 will be opening this year. That's where Chewy's was at. Fogo de Chao, where TGI Fridays was at, which is a very cool looking building. Steinhoffel's Furniture over there, by the Dick's Sporting Goods. Baracco's opened a second location where Traverso's was. Rainbow Cone out there in Harlem as well. Aldi with another new store. We have downtown Orland Park, which misspelled there, but downtown Orland Park, which should be opening or breaking ground at the end of this year if all goes well and the timeline stays in place. So medical, anybody seen the Silver Cross building? On 171st, beautiful building. They're already thinking about the second building because they're already full. So they're doing great. The 43 Orland Square and 82 Orland Square. 82 Orland Square is affiliated oncologists. They've already they're already in the space. So that's the old Robert Morris building behind the mall. 43 Orland Square is the Robert Morris that used to have the green roof. You've seen the work being done on it. It's taking a lot longer. That's supposed to be a cardiovascular group. We've had Hampton Inn, had the Mini Academy on 151st. Auto, we've had Tesla, plus a bunch of small expansions. On the residential side, you've got the final phase of Orland Ridge. You have Bluff Point finished up. Metro East Townhomes is out there, and then Waterford Point on 153rd and Wolf. So those are all things that are popping up. So here's some pictures of Hampton Inn. Anybody been in the Hampton? Well, I know the Chamber folks have been in the Hampton Inn. Anyone besides the Chamber folks been in the Hampton Inn? It's a beautiful building. It really is. And a beautiful hotel. Pete's Fresh Market, there's a picture of Pete's that's pretty current. They should be opening hopefully late summer, early fall. Silver Cross, and that is a gorgeous facility, and then the Rainbow Cone as well. So we've talked about this before. I'm not going to play the big video, but the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance between Tinley Park, Mokena, and Orland Park is still alive and well. I-80 is going to be a while. I mean, Big companies are not making big investments here, except when they're bought off by the state with a lot of money for EV plants. And I don't think we want an electric battery plant there because I'm not convinced that's the long-term, that's solvent long-term. And actually Rivian, who the state has spent a lot of money, is not doing their Georgia plant at this point, and they're struggling financially. So it's just going to be a while. I think it's going to require Illinois to change course and become a little more business-friendly, a lot more business-friendly. But we're not going to take a bad project, because once you take a bad project, you can't get rid of it. And that land will be here, if no one develops it, it'll be here long after I'm dead. It can still be here because it'll still be part of Orland Park. So better to wait for the right project than to take a bad one. And then downtown Orland Park, and here's a rendering of that, and then I got a short little video, which Vince, our cameraman, put together.
Downtown Orland Park's proposed entertainment district will focus on a pedestrian experience dedicated to creating an active plaza that will attract some of Chicagoland's most desirable cafes, restaurants, and marketplaces. There will be over 140,000 square feet of new building space that will be used for retail, restaurant, entertainment, and other commercial uses. But most importantly, no new residential space will be built. At the heart of all this development is Heroes Park. This park will be designed to be the centerpiece of the iconic development and will be home to art fairs, farmers markets, concerts, and a new ice rink. Parcels A and B will be used for a mix of commercial and office use. Jefferson Street will be a pedestrian-only street separating the two parcels and is intended to create a unique dining experience for the community. Some highlights of the other parcels include
So here's the rendering that you just saw. So with a daycare down in the lower left corner there, underneath the parking garage, potentially a brewery or restaurant, an entertainment venue. The park and the entertainment venue could get modified some in the latest plans. Medical building and, like I said, pedestrian area there that, including, I think, some rooftop dining. And so that's what's in play. My understanding from our conversations with Edwards Realty is that they have a lot of suitors on the hook that want to get into this. We have to finish the TIF that I talked about at the very beginning of the presentation. We have to conclude that TIF in order to get this started. So that's in progress, and right now the timeline is to potentially have all that wrapped up by October and be able to start moving a little bit of dirt out there at that time. So the bigger construction probably will really start next year. So that's economic development. Anybody have any questions on economic development while I'm here? And there'll be time for questions at the end, too. It's a quiet bunch. Public safety. This is important for everyone here. It's something we hear a lot about. If you watch social media, or now it's even, God forbid, your Ring camera group or whatever, that the alerts you get on that. I mean, it is constantly nonstop, people talking about crime, people listening to scanners, et cetera. So from our standpoint, that has a downside because a lot of it's inaccurate. But the last 6 years are the lowest index crimes of any of the last 29. And index crimes haven't changed. Our reporting hasn't changed. None of that has changed in the last 29 years. So that's the last 6 years. You can see in 2020 and 2021, you see that dip. That's largely related to COVID. People weren't out and about as much. So we expected as activity increased that we'd start to see, a bit of an increase again. In 2023, you're seeing an increase as well, a little bit. End of 2023, the Safety Act went into place. I will tell you that I think what we saw was an increase in retail theft and I hadn't really considered that, but the thing about the Safety Act is Cook County was somewhat already living under the Safety Act, so in some ways it's not new. But on the retail side, now these criminals know that they won't be locked up and held if they commit retail crimes. So you think about that if they happen to have kids at home, or they happen to have a job or something like that. If there's a threat of getting locked up, they maybe won't commit the crime. But now there's no threat of being locked up, and they'll be released right away, and they can still tend to all of those things. There's been a little bit more of that retail theft. So they're down, crime's down 36% since 2016. And that does not mean our police officers are not busy, or as busy as they've ever been. We're busy doing a lot of things preventatively to keep this happening. And as I point out, the most important reason we have these numbers is because we clear cases and catch people. And Cook County will only prosecute if they know they can convict. We give them enough evidence that they can convict. And so they don't want to come to our town. That doesn't mean that criminals aren't here. They're here. There's people with criminal records, or people who are, are bad people that some of them, they shop here, they eat here, but they pay here because they don't want to cause a problem in Orland Park because they're going to get caught. Motor vehicle thefts continue to be a problem. Believe it or not, most of these, 90% or so, are people just leaving their keys in the car, and people just coming in and pushing the button to get the car started and leave. And so they're in and out in a few seconds. The idea of all the other stuff that they do. However, with Dodges, Jeeps, you've seen that they can reprogram that in a few seconds. So some of those have been targeted, and then also Hyundai with their key turning. That you saw we were handing out the club again because they found a way to do that in a few seconds as well. So there's some of that. And those are vehicle thefts. So I know we had someone out there saying we had 5 carjackings a month or something like that. I think we've had 5 carjackings in the 7 years, maybe 6. None of us are happy about that, but car theft is not the same. And even car thefts, it's a little over a couple of months, more than we would like, and it's different now too. They're not they're not stealing them to chop them up. They're stealing them to go commit a crime or for transportation, and they just leave it somewhere else. So that's what you see more of today than years ago. So in 2017, we did observe an increase in violent crimes, and that's when we decided to be more proactive about what we're doing. The True Unit, Target Response Unit, amped up, and we've seen that decline a little bit. Now, we did see an uptick in 2023. 19 in 2021, that is so low for a town. All of those numbers, I think, between 2018 and 2022, I think 4 of those 5 years were the lowest crime rate per capita for towns over 50,000 people in Illinois. So, and I think we still might be there in 2023. Most of those, so I think 23 are domestic and aggravated assaults, so they're mostly domestic related, and over half of those, so I think 13 of the 30, roughly 40% are assaults on our police officers when they've engaged someone with a mental health disturbance or some other kind of disturbance or resisting arrest. So almost half are against our police, and that's trends historically since I've been mayor, that's the case. So the public is still very safe. It's almost all of these are someone that knows each other. Like in 2023, there was a murder. It was a murder-suicide. So there, that's that's what we see. So still very, very safe in Orland Park. Theft is a problem. It is still down 37% since 2016. So retail theft, we've got 12 million square feet of retail. We're going to have it. Cook County doesn't prosecute it. So one thing we do, and we have done that has helped, is we put in the requirement that businesses cooperate with us, meaning if they don't, then we fine them, because we want them to sign complaints. Because if they sign complaints, we can actually do something and catch folks. Now, a lot of these folks we put in our municipal violation. If it's a really small theft amount, it still counts as a theft, unlike what some people will tell you. It's not, we're hiding statistics. It doesn't matter whether they go to municipal court or they go to Bridgeview, it still counts. But the thing about that is if we go to Bridgeview with those thefts, you sit there all day and then they just toss it out. So our officer's wasting his time not on the street. Municipal court, goes to municipal court. The first hearing, our officer doesn't even have to be there. If they decide to challenge it, then the officer will come the next time. So we're keeping our officers on the street. And if they pay the fine, we're obviously getting the revenue from it, and so we're not wasting time. We keep guys on the street, and we're getting some revenue out of it. And and if it's juveniles, their parents are involved, and that type of thing. So why have we reduced it? I've talked about some of this stuff, but we have state-of-the-art technology and equipment. We've got a very supportive board, and the last board was also very supportive of the police. So that's one place where I would say the last board and us, we are 100% agree. We stay very engaged with citizens and businesses. I know we're doing beat meetings tonight. We're doing another beat meeting tonight for 2 beats. Did one earlier this week, and we got 2 more because there's 8 beats altogether. Programs and strategies, I already talked about investigations. We just clear cases. We spend more money on investigations so that we find them and we catch them. Targeted response unit, I talked about that as well. The mobile response unit, that's our mental health crisis team, if you will, and that's an outsourced grant we got from the FBI to have Trinity Services in-house. They will take over a call if it's nonviolent and mental health. Think about a mental health call. It's probably the worst moment of that person's life. And what we don't want, if they don't need to be, is to put them in the criminal justice system. We'd rather get them the help they need. So when that's possible, we do that. Police officers are the only one that can commit someone involuntarily. So if we can bring another professional in and we can walk away from the scene because it's nonviolent, our officers are on the street. So that's been very effective. The youth supervision policy, which I'll talk about more, but that's at the mall, been very, very, very successful. Calls for service. People ask about 2020, why was it so high? That was COVID, because calls for service include when we sit out in front of a business, they're writing a report or something like that. That's a call because they're checking on that business as well. So during COVID, we were doing a lot of business checks because they were closed. So we were running around that a lot. So there weren't a lot of stops on the street, not as much engagement there, not as much arrests. So we were spending that time stopping at various places. The proactive measures have resulted in a lot of unauthorized use of weapon arrests. You've seen this before. It really ramped up in 21 and 22, 73 to 122 from almost, I think there were 2 in 2017. And that's essentially a lot of it's from our TRUE unit, but also our other officers, where there's someone without license plates, or just a traffic stop. But a lot of times they're unoccupied vehicles without license plates or with expired tags. Well, that gives us the right to look in the car. Then you look in the car and there's drugs on the seat, or there's a weapon in plain view. And so now we can sit on the car. When they come out, we can obviously stop them, arrest them if we need to, or otherwise, if in the rare case, I think there might have been one where there was a CCL carrier that left the gun in plain view, so they're ticketed. But most of the time it's criminals with guns that are doing this stuff. That's how we're getting them off the street. They haven't committed another crime, an index crime here, but they are criminals that are here. They're here with weapons, so we're getting them off the street. That's gone down in 2023, I think largely because we've gotten the word out, and so they're not doing that here. But that's an example of some of the stuff that we do. Psychiatric committals that I talked about with that mobile response unit, they're down 45% since that unit was implemented. So you can see involuntary committals are way down from what they were. So by the way, that FBI grant expired. As typical with the federal government, you had a program that was working, so they stopped funding it. They seem to only fund stuff and keep throwing money at stuff that's not working. But we found another grant source that kept it open for what, another 5 years, Chief? Yeah, 5 years. So, Orland Square Mall. I hear about Orland Square Mall all the time. Amazing, I don't hear about it as much as I did when I first got here. I think people are understanding that Orland Square Mall is a very safe mall. There's no question it's got the most people in it of any place in Orland Park, so that's where you're going to have incidents from time to time. It's a top 1% mall in traffic in the whole country, top 10% in sales, right, Jeff? Still doing extremely well, right? So the youth supervision policy, which was put in March of 2021 by the mall, it was something that I worked on trying to get put in for a long time, and finally Simon Properties agreed to try it. I said, hey, you have a perception issue here, let's try it. And so they implemented it on Fridays and Saturday nights, which were the highest retail theft periods, and mostly juvenile, but those were the highest times of retail theft. I think since we've implemented this, you can count the number of thefts we've had during the time that this policy is in place on one hand in 2 years. So it's been effective. You can see how many wristbands they've put in of people who are accompanied by someone and they're under 18. You can also see how many people they've denied entry to, roughly 13,000 a year. I had a complaint just last week. Someone messaged me on Facebook, all upset that their daughter was turned away. And I'm like, well, she's 17. So be it. Even if you live here, it's keeping the place safe for everybody. And there are some inconveniences, but it's the world we live in. And it's kept the place a lot nicer. I know Jeff has gotten the feedback from Simon. He's the manager over at Orland Square Mall. And you've gotten the feedback. Tenants like it. Patrons like it.
Yeah, feedback is always positive on the YSB. Our tenants are in favor of it. It's really changed the tenor in the mall. We're very happy with the program.
So, and I think you've implemented this program now in other malls, right?
A few others, yeah.
And we were the first. So, very positive program. This is a measure. So CrimeCast is a company that measures crime at and around malls. So they do like a 1 to 3 mile look and a 1 to 6 mile look. 100 is the national average. Below that means you have less than the national average amount of crimes. So you can see from the left to the right, left being 2024, Orland Square has been very solidly a little slightly higher than half of the national average within 3 miles, and within 6 miles, because you start to capture some of the stuff to the east, we're still 75% of the national average. Look at Oakbrook. Look at Woodfield. People here would consider Oakbrook and Woodfield safe malls. I always hear, I go to Oakbrook because it's much safer. Not so much. And I'm not saying Oakbrook's not a safe mall. It is. But it's, to say that we're not and you're going there for that reason, the facts don't bear that out. It's a perception issue. It is not a reality. This is a picture of the 6 mile radius, kind of what the heat map. You see on the left, if it's green, it's below, better than the national average. If it starts turning yellow, it's higher than the national average. The stuff you see out there in yellow, that's actually not in Orland Park. That's east of Harlem. So that's what you see there. So the one east of Harlem is that's closest to the mall is over across the street from Sam's Club and all of that in Tinley. So it gives you some idea of perspective of the crime. And as you can see up north as well, you start to see it as well. This is not something that the people in this room don't know, right? We know this. But it just shows you Orland Square, and I mean, these are facts. This is data. We were named safest city in 2020. We were named the 8th safest small city in the whole U.S. in 2021. So, I mean, we're very safe. Our department does a fantastic job, from Chief Rossi, Deputy Chief West, all of our commanders, our lieutenants, our sergeants, our patrol officers, our true unit, our dispatchers, our admin staff. They all do a fantastic job. It takes all of them working together as a team to keep you safe. They do a great job of it, and the board is very supportive of it. And you're very supportive of them, and it really matters. Any questions on public safety? Again, a really quiet group. Finances. I'm sorry. I think this is actually infrastructure investment. Sorry about that. So infrastructure investment. It's something I've spent a lot of time on since I've been mayor. We were woefully underinvested in our infrastructure. The board spent a lot of time on it. Last year we talked about our capital program for 5 years. You've heard about this. I'm just having this up for a second. The redundant water supply, the water system. The part that our section, which is Spur 2, should be done in the end of this year. So we should see that being wrapped up and have Wheeler Drive repaved, and that area will see less construction. So I think the overall project is still a couple years out to be completed. It was a very large project going on for like a decade. So this graph that you see here, this is a measurement of our roads, okay? So red being very poor, the orange being poor, yellow is fair, green is good, and very good is blue, okay? In 2018, so right after I became mayor, we had an assessment done, and you can see over 40% of our roads were in poor or very poor condition, and only 20% of our roads were in good condition. If you flash forward, so in 2018 and 2019, I could not get the board then to, or in 2018, I couldn't get them to spend more money on the roads. The very first night that Trustee Healy, Trustee Katsinas, Trustee Milani came on board, they agreed to double our spending on roads. We were actually subsequently accused by one of the trustees of a crime for awarding that bid because we waived the bid and went with the one we currently had because the pricing was better than what was out on the open market. It allowed us to get double what we're getting done. We then subsequently have doubled the spending. We doubled the spending to $8 million for about 3 years. So just the extra work we did in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, you can see last year's assessment, how we were able to take those things down. And that should say 2020. So on the left-hand side, 2018 to 2023, that was under the plan we had then. That's what the roads were going to stay, okay? So the plan we had before we spent more money, that's where we were going to be. So we're still going to have over 40% in very poor condition. Instead, by spending that extra money, you can see where we were at in 2023. On the right-hand side, that was the latest actual assessment. So you can see that we increased the number of, we increased the amount of very good roads, and we brought the poor roads about 30%, but we brought very poor down to around 10. Under the plan that we have currently, we were able to back off our spending a little bit to $6 million a year. Under the plan we have currently, by 2027, you'll see that we'll have nothing in very poor condition. We will have 65% of our roads in very good condition. So we've made a major investment to making sure. And the key to the important thing about this is if you get those roads, you get rid of the very poor ones, you can actually maintain them cheaper because you don't have to rebuild them. So it's a balancing act. There are some roads, I get calls, my road's horrible, why isn't it being rebuilt? Because it needs to be rebuilt. And if we rebuilt your road, we couldn't fix, or rebuilt your subdivision, we couldn't fix 4 others. So we try and balance the roads we have to fix by making sure the other ones get brought up so that we don't have to get to that point. If you just spend all your money on the worst roads, they all keep getting to a point where you got to spend all that extra money. So that when you see them scrape 2 inches of asphalt and put 2 inches of asphalt down, that's what we're doing. Also, a lot of ADA improvements because the ADA laws changed in the last 20 years. So that will have been done, so the next time we have to do these roads, we won't have to do that. You won't have to do the concrete curbs and all that. You may have to do some repairs, but you're not going to have to do as much wholesale work on that. So this is going to put us in a much better position in the long run. That was the goal. So I know this is a tough thing to see, but you can see the pavement surveys color-coded, 2018 on the left, 2023 on the right. When you look at that, you can see the difference, how much has improved. This year, so 2019 to 2023, we did 59 road areas. We're probably 5 to 6 years ahead of what the 2017 schedule would have had us by the investments we've made. But this year, that's where you're seeing work being done. We always hear all the time, oh, you spend money in this section because you spend money out on the west side because they have more money. The people on the west side say you ignore us because we have money. We hear this all the time, right? At the end of the day, we use that assessment, assess every road in Orland Park. So we do it based on the assessments. Now let's move to parks. And you've probably seen this before, some of this before, but we had all the parks rated in 2018 and again in 2023, okay? In 2018, we had 39 of our parks, so roughly 60 parks, give or take, and some of them don't have playgrounds, so say 56 parks with playgrounds. 39 of them were in poor condition, okay? The park condition, on average, was 2.8. We consider anything below 2.5 to be poor in 2018. In 2023, the park condition is at 3.56. We're doing a fantastic job. So the playgrounds, we have 16 now that are still in poor condition. So we managed to get 23 of them out of that hole. The yearly plan, 2024 to 2028, you can see we're doing Schuessler Park now, as you know. We're doing 4 additional playgrounds. We're doing 4 pavilions. Dugan Park next year, 3 playgrounds, 2 pavilions, and the playgrounds and pavilions the next couple of years after that. We will have gotten through all of the ones in poor condition at that point. And then we will be able to do like 2 a year instead of doing as many as we've had to do. So again, we've spent a lot of money now so that in the long run we can have a much steadier state and much more affordable. Our new approach to investment, because what they used to do is they used to fix one park every 2 years and completely level it, redo it. That's what they did for the 10 years. 60 parks, obviously the math doesn't work. You're not getting enough parks. By evaluating it this way and hitting the stuff that's in poor condition, so at a park that, say, had bad ADA, we might just go do ADA there instead of the whole park. So that's the kind of things that we're doing. So you can see that we've done, 28 pavilions in the last 4 years or 5 years, 32 major park renovations. Basketball courts, we've done 23, I think. The John Humphrey Complex, tennis and pickleball, another 17. Bocce ball courts, we've done a handful of those, like 9. We've done the volleyball courts. Centennial Park West is being done. Schuessler Park's being done, and we added some batting cages as well to our parks. So those are all things that we've done. And you can see from the map, it's kind of all over the place. It's not in one area. Other projects include our open lands improvements and bike paths. So the one on the left is the 104th Street bike path, which now connects to Centennial Park West to the grasslands. A lot safer than riding along 104th Avenue, so which is great. If you look just to the right of, you can't see it in this picture, but to the right of the lake, kind of where right at the end of the grass, if you keep going to the right, that's about where the bald eagle's nest is at. It's in Orland, so that's flying around Centennial Park from time to time. Dr. Marsh, which is off of Wolf Road, also have a path there as well that we put in. That's not used as much, but still a nice quiet place if you'd like to go. And from what I understand, good fishing. The Labey Center right over here was redone. New dance floor, the new main room for meetings and for special rec, which is fantastic because that room was horrible before. And then you can kind of see the hallway. So it really came out great, the improvements that we made over there. And we have air conditioning there now for the first time ever. So should be comfortable in the summer and not a sweat box. The new police firing range, that has started. We have a groundbreaking here in June, but that has started and should be substantially complete by the winter of next year and probably open by this time next year. It'll be open. So we'll have a new emergency operating center, training center, and firing range, plus the ability to open the doors and bring in cars and do some training there as well. So all that stuff is what helps us keep you safe. So, and anybody besides our police, anyone see our old firing range? Yeah, we were basically shooting into a hill with a bunch of wooden slats up on the sides, right over by the Public Works Department. So not exactly the safest. So we shut that down, and we're building a safe place to do that. The folks at Miller's and Stan's didn't really like all the gunfire all the time. New Veterans Center. So on the right is the athletics garage that's going in. So that's on West Avenue. That project is underway, but basically that garage was falling down. So we're building a new garage there for all of the athletic equipment, all the maintenance equipment that handles John Humphrey Fields and other fields. So we have that. And then the Veterans Center is right there. There's a house, an old house that's there. It's got a new deck. It's got a kitchen. So you can kind of see on the right-hand side there's a kitchen, and then there'll be a meeting space, and then there'll also be rooms for the VFW and for the Legion, and storage, which they currently don't have inside their current space. They're in an outdoor shed. There's also going to be an outdoor shed, so the veterans groups will get a lot more storage space. They actually get a slightly bigger main meeting room, and then they have a kitchen, and they have a deck. So the old Veterans Center is obsolete. Actually, it just has too many dollars worth of work that needs to be done. This has got another 20 years of useful life before it needs significant repairs. So makes sense to move them to this location. It's moving them about 2 blocks, 3 blocks. And it's a nice wooded area. If you're familiar with the current Veteran Center in this building, it's a much nicer setting. So Schuessler Park, we're going to have a grand opening on June 1st at noon, so please come out, and we'll give you a flyover from Monday. So you can see that's going to be awesome. There's a phase 2, which is going to include the playground. That is not done yet. It's an ADA playground. We're still raising money for that, so that's not going to be done this year. But the fields will open June 1st. There, of course, are some things that still have to go in there. There's the bleachers and a few other things, bathrooms. There's a few other things that have to go in, but the fields themselves will be open and usable on June 1st. And you can see they were lined for soccer as well as lined for football. So the Pioneers will practice there in the fall, and which saves our other fields. Anyone who knows anything about football knows that it tears fields up. So does soccer to some extent, but not to the extent that football does. But these fields, we won't have that issue. The other thing, anybody remember how much flooding was at Schuessler Park? Yeah, well, we had all this rain. Fields are completely usable. So it's half of this project was actually stormwater, and we also dredged the pond. There was a lot of interesting things in that pond, tires and other stuff. And it will be stocked because now the fish will actually be able to survive because it's been dredged. There'll be some outcroppings for fishing locations and things like that. So it's going to be great. And then the sledding hill got moved over, upper left corner of your picture. That's still being worked on as well. So they're still doing some work on that. The big thing was making sure that the fields are usable as soon as possible. Centennial Park West. Grand opening, first concert, June 8th. Any country music fans in here? Just 3? Let's. So paneling is going to go in the next week or so. So where you see all those black lines, it's all paneling that's going to go in on there. Stage of import. Also, the water tower is being repainted. It was one of the last two that need to be repainted. There's From the Grass. Somebody was having fun with the drone. So Centennial Park West, it's so opening June 8th. Again, it'll be mostly complete. We'll have a few things left to do. We know that there's some roofing panels that are going to still have to go up, decorative stuff, not structural. The asphalt behind the stage was done actually yesterday. So there's one more course that has to go on there, but that's done. So they're getting a lot closer. They have a lot of site work to do, a lot of touch up on the interior. The interior looks great though, and it's probably much closer to being done this week than the outside. But as you can see, we got most of the grass in so that it's been taking for a month so that the concerts will be ready to go for the concerts. So I'm going to ask this question again. How many country music fans here? A little better. Got a lot of shy people here too, apparently. So Gary LeVox, who was anybody familiar with Rascal Flatts? I see some head nods. He's the lead singer of Rascal Flatts. He is our opener for, they split up about 3 years ago, I think. He's the, amicably, but he's the opening act on June 8th. So should be a great concert. And then on July 13th, we have Pat Benatar. So also great concert. So please get your tickets. I'm going to sound like Ramsey now. Get your tickets. If you buy all 3 concerts, it's $20 each. If you buy single concert ticket, it's $25. $25 for 6 hours. You can bring in your own food. You can bring in your own drink. It costs you $25 just to go see a local cover band like Penny and the Loafers. So, for those of you who don't know, that's Ramsey's band. So please come out to that event. It's going to be fantastic. Any questions on our infrastructure projects? Oh, we have one.
Any plans to improve the sidewalks on a lot of the main thoroughfares?
Sidewalks on the main thoroughfares. What do you mean by main thoroughfares?
Well, 143rd Street.
So the sidewalks on state roads, so the question was sidewalks, are we going to improve them on the main thoroughfares? The sidewalks on the main roads, like 143rd Street, a lot of that is owned by the state. So it's state roads, it's state. 143rd Street from LaGrange to Will Cook is state. When that it's been engineered. When that's done, it's going to have a bike path. You'll have a complete path there, but it won't be done until the road's redone. As far as sidewalks throughout the village, we have a sidewalk. We did an assessment, just like you saw with the roads. We did an assessment for all the sidewalks. And I think it's a 2-year plan total to get all the sidewalks done that were, you're nodding your head, Rashid, 2 years, right? And we're in the 2nd year of that program, or it's next year it'll be done. Next year, all of those will be done. So you'll see a lot of grinding for some of the minor differences, and then you'll see complete repouring of others. So
I live on the east side, so I'm talking more like 82nd Avenue to LaGrange Road. Those sidewalks are very poor, and either bike riding or a grandma with a stroller has a really rough time.
So part of that is ours, part of that is not ours. So the part that's ours is included in these local sidewalk programs, but part of it is county, and so those parts that are county, the county is responsible for, and we can't do anything about it. But as far as the village-owned ones we're dealing with, as far as the stuff that's the state when the roads get done, but some of the other ones, if you give us specifics, we can let you know exactly when that area and if it's something that we are responsible for.
I have a question. I live across the street from the new Centennial Park West stage that's going in. And what kind of security or permissions will you have for people to be able to get into their residences and their townhomes and condominiums?
Everyone will be able to get into their condominiums and their townhomes and their single-family homes. I just saw the plan yesterday. There's going to be, in fact, my feedback for that was to make sure that we code red, sent letters and everything, because I live in that neighborhood too, and to make sure that there's going to be passes for the residents, so people that don't have those passes can't get to those locations during the concert, but residents still can.
Those passes will be passed out to us, but prior to the...
Yes, you can get them. You'll be able to get them here. We talked about that as well. You can either get them here, or we're going to have a way that we can get them mailed to you as well.
Okay.
So that you don't have to come in.
All right, thank you. And is there a time limit as far as when the lights go off?
There is. We have an ordinance for that. I think our ordinance is 11 o'clock, but I think most of our concerts end 10 o'clock or 10:30.
And one final question. The village is in charge of the stage. Can a public company come in and use that stage as well?
If they sign an agreement with us and rent it, yes.
Okay, and would they be in charge of the security?
Will they be? It depends on the agreement that we have with whoever is there. But typically, someone comes and uses our facilities. They're either responsible for their own security, or they pay for our police presence and they cover our costs.
Okay, thank you.
So, and we have an entire security plan. We have cameras. We have alarm systems over there to keep it secure. But also, the gates will be open. Non-concert, the gates will be open so that you can still walk through that area and you can still use it as a park as you have in the past.
The fence came down yesterday. Is there going to be a permanent fence installed?
The fence came down yesterday.
There's a temporary fence?
Yeah, it's come down for construction, but there's a fence around the whole facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other infrastructure questions? You can ask now or later. Okay. Finance. So you guys have seen, anyone who's been here before have seen this chart before. In 2017, but this was the first chart I was given for finance about June of that year, and I just about had a heart attack that We were projected, you see in 2016, we had 35% reserves. By 2017, we were already dipping down to 23%. And by last year, we were supposed to be in the hole and not have any reserves. That was our projected spending plan for the village when I got here. I asked the obvious question is, how long have we known this? Since 2012, and we've done nothing? No, we've done nothing. So when you saw the early retirement program and you saw some other things that we did, that's a large reason why we did that. So we really cut things as much as we could. We made a bunch of changes. And so these are the actuals in 2023 that we were able to achieve. So, so we ended up with, 2018, 34.4, 2019, 42.6. We were up to 48% reserves. So we used a lot of those reserves for these capital projects. So we had the money there, so we used them for the capital projects. But we were projected to actually not have any reserves, so we did a lot to make sure that we had those reserves. We basically improved efficiency with staff. We eliminated a lot of waste. We've also lowered our debt by about $17 million in total since 2016 in doing all this. Tax rates, property taxes get asked all the time. I get very frustrated with the state and the governor demanding that municipalities cut their property tax. In fact, the governor has had a couple of op-eds attacking mayors specifically. Orland Park, and this is not uncommon for other towns too, Orland Park is 6.1% of your property tax bill. That's it. It was 6.8 when I got here in 2017. So it wasn't that high then either. Your schools and the fire district make up 81% of your property tax bill. But they have the same problem is that Sandburg, for example, is only funded, District 230 is only funded 8% by the state. It's supposed to be half. They're funneling all their, they have spent a lot more money on education. It's all going to the city of Chicago. None of it's going to the suburbs. So they're demanding that you cut property taxes, yet they continue to add more mandates and more mandates that we have to pay for. If you're a school with those mandates, you don't have much place to turn. So that's a challenge. Our goal, by the way, is to get this under 5%. That's our goal. Now, you've seen this before too. ARPA, remember when ARPA and everybody was handed out money? Not so much Orland Park. We were one of 46 communities that had we're in a separate category. The other 1,300 communities, or almost 1,300 communities in the state, got the same flat, fixed amount of $136 a person. The other 46 had a funding formula, and the funding formula basically, as you can see, it kind of screwed suburbs and helped, very reliably blue areas, I would say. 95% for Biden in Evanston, for example. You can see where the money went, and that's what so they put a number on it. I mean, Chicago's $695 a person. We're $86 a person. So they think the residents of Chicago are 7.5 times more valuable than us. And they actually put numbers to it. So we were shorted about $2.9 million from the state level on that. And here's an interesting one too, is I don't think it's up here, but Oak Park's up here. Oak Park's got 6,000 less people than us, and they got over 10 times as much money. So almost 10 times as much money. So that's a problem. LGDF, some of you have heard about LGDF, Local Government Distributive Fund. I know this is kind of some boring, wonkish stuff, but 1969, when income taxes were put in, the agreement was 10% would be shared to the municipalities per capita. So every town, based on their population, gets the same amount per capita. There's not some kind of formula like the school formula or like the ARPA formula. It's per capita. So, of course, we don't get as much as we put in because we're a little more affluent, but we still get our fair share, if you will. Well, they cut that in 2010, 2011 timeframe to ultimately it was less than 6%. Now it's back up to like 6.47, but we have been shorted $50 million since that time. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of capital. A lot of the stuff that we're doing, we wouldn't have to make the creative things that we're doing to make it happen if we were getting our LGDF. Additionally, there were a lot of questionable capital expenditures from the village that hurt us. Orland Park Health and Fitness, you've heard me say this, it's a reasonable discussion whether we should have taken that over or not taken that over. We have taken it over, so that's not a question anymore. But the thing is, they never figured, but when they took it over, they never analyzed it to see how much it was going to cost us. Because Payless Health had not put any money into it because they knew they were going to close it. Anyone in business knows that's what they're going to do. Well, we spent $13 million getting the pool up to date and everything else up to date. It's a reasonable discussion to have to say, do we want to spend $13 million to get this or not, to have an indoor pool? And I could really argue either side of that argument. What I can't argue is they didn't know. They had no idea, they just did it. That's malfeasance. So Tinley Creek is a project that MWRD was going to do to fix the creek. It requires us to get some eminent domain potentially and to get some, basically to get easement for people. I think we have 8 people now, 6? So of almost 50 people, we only have 6 that we're going to have to use eminent domain. Everyone else gave us the easements. The then administration didn't want to have a tough discussion with them. Back when the project cost and MWRD was picking up the whole cost. Well, now the cost is over doubled. MWRD is not really kicking in any more money, so now it's going to cost us $4 million, all because we didn't fix it way back when, because we didn't want to have a hard discussion. Well, we're having that hard discussion, and it's quite possible those 50 people won't vote for me. I don't really care. I mean, I want them to vote for me, but at the end of the day, we have to do what's right, and when you have that kind of money coming from an outside agency to help fix a problem that's causing flooding in people's yards, and we're willing to pay, we, the taxpayers, are willing to pay $4 million because of the benefit of all of the village to basically help these property owners, I think that's something that we should make sure we do. The Triangle, I said we were $27.5 million in the hole, so clearly that's a problem. LaGrange Landscaping, do you know we paid for all of that? We did. It's beautiful, no question. $18.8 million worth of, given everything else we had to do, I'm not so sure we needed it to be that beautiful. These are some of the questions. Boley Farm, we acquired that. It's costing us $2.4 million to demo and fix the buildings that are there. So these are all things that cost us a lot of money. Remember, in the middle of all this, we also borrowed $64 million for apartments and paid interest on that. Remember the tax rebates? I know some of you do because you still ask me about them. When are we getting our rebates back? Well, you won't be getting rebates back because if you look at the rebates, I think every year but one, we borrowed money. All that red is borrowing money. We borrowed a ton of money every year. We're giving you rebates. So we're giving you money on your credit card, okay? And it showed up right before it was, if you remember, the check showed up 2 weeks before Election Day. It's like $150 or something. The irony is they were never even opposed, so they didn't even need to do it. But it was $39 million of rebates, $18 million conservatively in interest that we paid. So that's $57 million that we could have used for all that capital we were behind. So if you look at the state funding shortfalls, remember I said we did the capital program? We had $106 million of unfunded capital. The state shortfalls alone get you almost to within $29 million of that total if they didn't take the money from us that they're taking. By the way, they are currently talking about taking another $2.6 million a year from us. So, and pension, reforming, they did a pension reform back 2011, made pensions a little more affordable going forward for people hired after 2011. They're talking about rolling that back. If they roll that back, it'll cost us, basically everyone will be on the reform will have never happened, essentially. And that'll cost us about another $1.5 million a year. So that's real money that we have to figure out how to cover that. The impact of the financial decisions I showed you, if you took away all of those decisions, we'd actually have had $14 million extra to do capital. So you combine the state and our spending, there's plenty of money to do all the capital programs out of pocket without having to do things, without having to get new revenue streams or other choices. So that's why it's real important that we make good decisions now and don't tie the hands of the board. go back to roads. We had one board member that wanted to do all the roads right now and borrow for it. What happens if you do all the roads right now? They all fail at the same time, which means some other board's going to be stuck with that problem. Instead, what you want to be doing, just like you do with a business, you want to have a steady amount every year that you can control. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to set us up so that long term we will be in a position where we can pay for our capital needs as we go and not have to finance any of it. These are the capital projects we have. You can see the big ones, a lot of projects in water. The Public Works building is another one, the police training facility. So those are kind of the big ones that we have. Dugan Park as well on there. In Dugan Park, we're adding pickleball courts, by the way. So we're taking down the cultural center and putting in pickleball courts. Here's something we've done a fantastic job, and I want to thank Rashid and his staff and George as well. So we've really focused on grants and getting money from the federal government and other government entities. Prior to, from 2006 to 2017, we received a total of about $3 million in grants for projects. Since 2017, we've received $41 million. So that's money we are getting from other sources to pay for these capital projects. So that's huge. We also have about $94 million more we've applied for. So we made engineering its own department. We beefed it up a little bit. It is pays for itself with these grants that we get. So, so very important. As a result of all these changes, like we've talked about, the police training facility, the public works garage, the water project, the local roads, ADA compliance, the major parks, all of that stuff. And we want to be self-sufficient, less reliant on the state, because you can never count. I just said the state's going to take more money away from us. You can never count on the state funding, that even though if it's been there for 30 years, it could go away tomorrow. That's the village. The village is, we're doing great. I mean, you look at, you go around, and I know, a lot of this stuff is dry, but you look at public safety. Who's doing better than we are in terms of public safety? Maybe there's other places doing as well, but there's nobody doing better than we are in terms of public safety. Look at economic development. You go around and find a town that has Steinhoffels and Pete's Fresh Market and Silver Cross and these restaurants coming here. You're going to be hard pressed to find it. You're definitely not going to find it south of I-88. I can promise you. So, so we are doing fantastic on that. Infrastructure, I really believe we're best in class in how we handle it. I think we're the model for good government for the whole country on how to handle it. It's fact-based, it's decision-based, or fact-based decision-making that we do, and we've done a great job of, the numbers show, we've done with parks what we've done with roads. Are they all perfect? No, they never will be. We have so many, you're always going to be fixing stuff. But they've gotten way better than they were. We started in a big, giant hole, and we've climbed ourselves out of that hole that by the end of 2027, we're going to be on a kind of a steady state path going forward. So, and that's thanks to this board. Because again, on the parks and roads, the three trustees were blocked on that as well. I mean, until they showed up, I was unable to get any of that done, and it was a 4-3 vote to get that stuff done too. So, so those things are all really important. And obviously Schuessler Park, Centennial Park, and the bigger projects are great as well. So Orland Park's doing great. We're in a very difficult climate, as Trustee Compass said. The state, I just told you, another $4 million a year. To put that in perspective, that's about an 8% cut to our operating budget. That's going to hurt if we have to do that. We're going to really have to make some hard decisions if those things happen. I spend a lot of time lobbying state legislators about this. So hopefully we make progress. But we're going to know by the end of June when the budget comes out what actually happens. The other thing is the state loves to give us unfunded mandates. So when you guys, how many of you guys ever noticed that they talk about, they'll put it out in the press about they have some insurance bill to hold the insurance companies accountable. You seen those kind of things? Well, so holding the insurance company accountable and making them pay more, one that you'll see one for police and fire. We're going to require you to pay this for free. You're paying that for free because the village is self-insured. We've negotiated, and it's a very good health plan that, believe me, most of us in this room would love to have the health plan that our employees have and our police have. It's fantastic. You're not going to find too many places that are better, right? And yet the state is now going to mandate more coverages that we have to pay for out of pocket, which hurts our budget. And we've negotiated this, and the union's happy with it. We're happy with it. Why is the state getting involved in that? It's not just us. It's across the whole state. So when they target these things, it's targeting, think of Orland Park as a business. When they do the paid leave for all workers and the minimum wage, it impacts us. Paid leave for all workers, what was it, George? About $200,000 was the cost on that? So that cost us about $200,000 was the potential cost for us. So all of these things add up, and the state has to change its course to make it a more business-friendly environment and more friendly for municipalities. Because not just us that has to deal with it, all the other towns around us have to deal with it, including the ones that are struggling. They have to deal with it. So it makes it a challenge. So with that, I'll be happy to open it up to questions.
Hi, I don't necessarily have a question, but as last year, I want to thank you, the mayor, and your staff for making this such a great place to live. It's safe, it's friendly, it's fun, and I talk from experience because, well, those of you who don't know me, I'm Randy Barcella. I'm a director and ambassador of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm a real estate appraiser full-time, real estate broker part-time, and I have one of the longest-running real estate and mortgage radio shows now, 17 years, started on AM 560. So when I go from Kankakee to Joliet to north on Antioch and Wisconsin border and Winthrop Harbor and all of the sanctuary city, it's not safe. I'm not comfortable there. And a lot of times, even if I have concealed carry, a couple of my friends are with Chicago's Finest, and they meet me at the properties. It's just not safe, and nobody has what we have here. We have one of the best public libraries in the state of Illinois, and the staff is right there. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and thank you to the trustees and your staff for everything that's going on. And for Orland Park's Finest, police and fire, who has that? There's very little crime here. How about places of worship? It doesn't matter what your place of worship is. We have it here. It doesn't matter as far as stores are coming here like nonstop. I've been shopping at Pete's Fresh Market in Willowbrook for, I want to say, 7 years, and now it's coming here. We've got big name restaurants coming here. And the mayor's done such an outstanding job, and I want to tell you, it's safe here. The parks we have, the recreation we have here. We've got Amy Coghill, owner of Silver Lakes Country Club. It's not just for golf. You can go there on a date, you take your family there, the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Chamber of Commerce reps here. And even, I know there's limits to the how many times this great mayor can have here. It doesn't matter. If you're a business owner or a citizen living here in Orland, it's going to continue. Why? We've got the great trustees going to stay here. You have your staff still here. Chamber of Commerce, Ramsey, you're not going anywhere. You're building downtown. Sarah, Amy, I mean, look at the other Chamber of Commerce members here. This room is here today for the mayor to say, wow, we do live in a great place, and it's going to continue to be a great place. And I want to thank you for everything that you've been doing, because we're all doing what we can to help you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Randy. So, I grew up 2 blocks from here when none of this existed, and moved back and raised my family here. So I was raised here. I raised my family here. It's a great place to raise a family. I'm biased. It's a wonderful place to grow up and to have your family. And I think we all feel that way. Are there other questions?
Is there any update on that development of 159th and LaGrange Road, the southwest corner?
The southwest corner of 159th and LaGrange, so where PD's 2 is. It's been bought by someone, and they've submitted, but I can't really talk about it. So they haven't submitted formal plans to us yet. I think they're coming in the next few weeks. They're coming in the next few weeks, the formal plans. So I will tell you that the plans we've seen, it's retail, residential, office, no residential, correct? Yeah, so that much I can tell you. Any other questions?
Mayor, video, and you just mentioned it, video was very clear about no residential in the triangle. What's the relevance to that in terms of the project itself and for Orland Park residents as a whole? Why is that relevant?
Well, so one of the things that we could do as a board I can tell you because we used to get it every week. People want to build apartments everywhere right now. They would love nothing better than to fill Orland Park with apartments in every vacant parcel. The board's stance is we don't want more apartments. However, with that said, we did approve something in the last board meeting that will have apartments. There are places where apartments can be done by right. There's also places where apartments actually, it's the only kind of housing that makes sense just because it's in a bad location, it's not near single-family housing, there's a lot of traffic, that kind of thing. So, in a case-by-case basis. But the triangle, as you recall, we were supposed to be commercial and shoppable and walkable and all those things, and all we got was apartments. And then we got a non-for-profit, which is great that they're here. I can tell you that they were looking at other locations. They were coming to Orland Park. We stole them from other private developers, so they were coming here. So at the end of the day, we have enough apartments down in that area between across by Mariano's and there. We don't have problems there, but we have enough apartments. We don't need more residential there. What we need is we need something that attracts. And what I told Edwards and told all the developers that pitched this, we want something that all of Orland Park can enjoy, not just the people that live there. So we're not building that corner for apartment dwellers who, let's face it, a lot of them are not necessarily going to stay in Orland Park. Now, I grew up in an apartment and I stayed in Orland Park. A lot of them will, but at the end of the day, they're not as committed as someone who owns homes. And so I want to make sure that if we're going to invest money in that area and help make something good there, that everyone can enjoy it. So that's the goal, and more residential was certainly not needed to make that happen.
So you're talking about the apartments, I understand the apartments you're talking about would be also in the new area, 159th in the Grange behind Pepco's. Are they also going to take over the Kentucky Fried and that EP station?
Okay, so the question is about apartments across the street from the Petey's 2, across the street behind the Pep Boys. And the question was, are they also going to take over the Kentucky Fried Chicken and the BP station? That property that is owned, it basically, if you think of all the vacant land between Pep Boys and KFC, and between Pep Boys and Lazy Boy, and then between Lazy Boy and the assisted living facility, and then all the way to 94th Avenue. That's what that property owner owns. And those properties were combined over 30 years ago, and we've never had development there. They do not own the BP, they do not own the Kentucky Fried Chicken. The BP is a tough one because it's so small of a site. Kentucky Fried Chicken, we get calls on already, so I'm fairly confident that'll get filled. So if you think about that site, and then behind that site, there are already 5-story multifamily dwellings right behind that site. Off of 94th Avenue, it's Orland Hills. There's really no single family in that area whatsoever. No one's ever going to build a house there and be able to sell it, is the bottom line. Right? So that's a place where actually multifamily makes sense, even if we don't want to see a ton of it. Also, by right, they could actually build 100% residential on that site, according to our zoning laws. Because they're doing a mixed-use development, they can only, by right, they can do 40% of the square footage can be residential. We're allowing them to go over that because they're putting in a hotel and 3 restaurants along, so that'll be along 159th and then also along LaGrange. So all those areas will be filled. So the apartments are not going to be sitting on the main road. They're going to be in the back against buildings that are already 5 stories. There's just no way, and there's a lot of wetland on the site, so there's going to be basically going to be a pond and a walking path around the pond, so it'll beautify the area. But it's been a very difficult site to develop. The board was still not very thrilled with approving apartments. But if you think about the fact that they could do all apartments there by right, we're actually, we're getting what we want, which is some commercial. And our big thing is to make sure the commercial's built first, or to have an assurance that it's going to be built, because what we don't want is all apartments and then no commercial. So that was kind of what the board was discussing. So the board did pass it unanimously, but if you watch the vote, you'll see that several board members were very torn on their positions. But again, that's one of those few properties that it actually makes sense. It doesn't make sense in a lot of places. That place, it actually does. Any other questions?
One of the things that is a great conduit for misinformation is social media. And the latest target has to be with changing the signages and how you're trying to erase Orland history. So what's the straight skinny on that?
Well, the straight skinny is, you're right. People try and use social media for nefarious purposes. And remember I said before, you have the bullies and the quote cool kids, and some people want to be part of that crowd, and so they jump on the bandwagon, think it's going to make them cool to bring these attacks forth that just frankly, it's just not true. You can walk out in front of the Civic Center, you can walk past the Village Hall, you can walk past the Levy Center, and you'll see it's not true. It'd require board action. There's been no board action ever on those things. The only thing we've done is name a building. We haven't taken names off of any buildings. Signs were changed. If you notice, they're standard across the village now. So a lot of signage was changed, including here. You'll notice they're all standard. And we did add wayfinding signage up front to say what's the Civic Center, what's the Village Hall, because I can tell you, if they haven't been here a lot, they don't know where the Village Hall is. They're standing in front of it, and they don't know. Because after all, it is Orland Park's Village Hall. So that was basically what we did. So it was all misinformation for whatever purposes. I'm not going to get into people's motivations. We've been dealing with this. I've been dealing with it for 7 years. Some of the board members for 5, others for 3. And it's just, if you go back and look at it, it was used to generate a personal attack, is what it was done. So we'll see more of it, just like I said last year. Unfortunately, the election come in April 2025, and the election's already started. So we'll see more of it. Any other questions? Well, at least someone is. What's our current population? Oh, about 59,000. And we're adding people. If you saw, there's an article today that said the suburbs of Chicago are losing a lot of people. Well, we're not. We're still gaining. We're not gaining like we used to, but we're still gaining, so, which is a positive. It's a great place to be. As I always like to say, we're going to be one of the islands in the state of Illinois. That's a positive place to be. So that's what we're trying to do here. Any other questions? Nobody wants to know where to go get the tickets for the Centennial Park West show? You can get those online. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out. And if Ramsey hadn't been so late in starting the program, we would have been out on time. So again, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Hopefully this was informative. Don't hesitate to come to I have mayor's breakfasts just about monthly. I don't have one this month because of this, but I have one just about every month. So please come and you can ask questions on anything. And generally I speak for like 10 minutes and just answer questions for an hour and a half. So also you can always come to our board meetings and ask questions. And please come out to the Schuessler Park grand opening on the 1st of June. Also, please come to that first concert, June 8th. Also, June 6th is the Market on the Park. It's kind of a soft opening for Centennial Park West because Market on the Park is moving there. All through the year, Market in the Park, we will have tours of the facility. So if you want, we'll have people bringing free tours so you can go back and see everything that was done inside the facility. And it really is top notch. And we've already heard from our sound guys that once the word gets out on this, we'll start to see more and more acts want to be here because it's such a fantastic venue. So thanks again for coming. I appreciate it. Have a great Thursday and a great rest of the week.